you're organizing this new event in West Palm Beach. You got a bunch of nice speaker aligned for that event.
But yeah, we've been really lucky. We got, Andrew Huberman and Dr. Mark Hyman, Gabrielle Lyon, and over 90 speakers now.
By the way, we are still designed as humans to live up to 125, but we don't do it. We don't make it just because of the pollutant and the stress and everything we have around.
I think, like many people, I'm very critical of the sort of focus of big pharma on maintaining chronic conditions without curing them. Obviously, drugs that you have to take for your whole life make a lot of money.
Welcome to the show, Sean. Thank you for joining us. Today we are going to talk about some things that is crazy, important, and sick. It's insane. You're organizing this new event in West Palm Beach that is called Eudēmonia.
One thing's for sure is that I may not be a branding genius, perhaps with the name that no one can pronounce, but but yeah, we generally say Eudēmonia, but
Eudēmonia.
we're happy for everyone to call it whatever they would like.
Where is this name coming? This name coming from?
Yeah, it's actually a word that dates back to ancient Greece, to Aristotle, who used it a lot in some of his philosophical writings. It really refers to the search and kind of quest for the highest human good. We call it, in sort of modern shorthand, life well lived. But the idea of that is that it obviously encompasses physical health and mental health, but it's more than that. It's community and the respect of your peers and the effect you have on the world, ideally a positive effect. So this idea of kind of coming to a sense of purpose and meaning in life.
Kind of what we say with life spanning, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is
I
it
think
some
that's
things
true.
that you are yeah, is it some things that you are chasing personally as well?
I mean, I think we're all chasing it, right? I mean, if I look around at this, and I mean, I think people chase it more overtly. Some people chase it more overtly than others, and in different ways. But I think that one of the great, modern malaises is perhaps the opposite of eudaimonia, this sense that life is meaningless or valueless, or that we're all doomed, or many of these other things. And I think that's a reflection of maybe the way we're living our lives. And obviously eudaimonia, I think, like nirvana or enlightenment, is perhaps one of those things that's not actually attainable, but it's certainly something everyone seeks to some extent. It's like, I think it's built into all of us to seek it.
Yeah, kind of the ikigai for the Japanese culture, I guess.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
pretty
I
much.
agree.
Talking about Japanese culture and the ikigai, you got a bunch of nice speaker aligned for that event. Tell me more
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah, well, I'm feeling sort of very grateful, actually. I mean, I think there's also there's an element with any event that is a little bit like a zeitgeist,
Mm.
where if something is at the right time and the right moment in culture, that for whatever reason the idea resonates with people. And I think that's it. So I think in a lot of ways, what we're doing with eudaimonia is more reflective of what's happening than in culture, than leading what's happening in culture. But it is definitely reflecting a movement where I think people have become, at one level, increasingly aware and able to monitor their own health, and then at the same time more and more concerned with the fact that health is declining and seeming to be going in the opposite direction across societies, and Western societies really in general. And so all those trends are coming together at once. But yeah, we've been really lucky. We got Andrew Huberman and Dr. Mark Hyman and Gabrielle Lyon. And I mean, honestly, we have over 90 speakers now. And, it's really, I would say, the who's who of the, science backed, preventative or prevention focused voices, largely drawn from the, circuit of authors and podcasters. But,
Right.
people like yourself.
Yeah, well, I think that Andy did a great job, and Andrew
Hmm.
Huberman did,
Yeah.
did a fantastic job in the past years to make like science and neuroscience like accessible to many people. Before he was on his podcast, no one knew about neuroscience and the effect of whatever you do in your life, and how you can optimize your own life. So he got that aligned, and several others have been following that track to try to educate. Now you have all these people together for one event, which is fantastic, because there are so many events going on all across the planet, all across the world, and especially in the United States. If you want to go to an event, you can go every week.
Mhm.
But one like you're doing, I think that the level of knowledge that is there, it's quite unique. So when I bet that when people will get out of the event, they're not going to be they're probably going to be smarter than before stepping in through the door.
Well, I certainly hope so. We all could probably use some of that. I know I could. Yeah, I mean, I think, the concept here is that, there's, I suppose, a couple things that I hope will happen. And of course, one of the wonderful things about being an event organizer is that you never actually know what will happen. You
Mm,
imagine what will
yeah.
happen, but it's really millions of different atoms bouncing around in a room. And so, those personalities and different quirks all sort of yield a result. But it's hard to not imagine. I mean, one thing I would say that we've gotten with, Andrew Huberman is a good example of this, but these are some of the best communicators. They're not only great scientists and obviously great
Correct.
researchers and great observers of things, but they're incredible communicators. I mean, I listen to Huberman and I will say it's just stunning to me the way he clearly enunciates, explains a concept, pauses, reiterates the concept in a different way. I mean, it's really just an educational tour de force what he does. And that's the other thing that I think they all share in common, which is their audience in all of these cases. It isn't other doctors or other scientists. It's actually, people like you and me who are, I think of them as wellness seekers,
Yeah.
people who are looking to change. So obviously there's an ability to take complicated scientific concepts and explain them to people that aren't necessarily scientists. That's a skill in itself. So yeah, I mean, I think that's part of it, but I guess, I've always been a believer. I mean, I have a fairly long history in events
I
now,
know.
and yeah, and
in
so
in the wellness industry.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I've created a very strange career for myself. But I think one of the things that's amazing about it is that everyone thinks they're coming at first for Andrew Huberman or Mark Hyman or some of the big names
Yeah.
that they want to see, and of course that's true.
Yeah, that's okay.
But
Yeah.
it's not really, I think, what people take away. It's often the surprising moments they have, with a speaker they've never heard of, or with another attendee, or a
Mhm.
side conversation they have in the hallway with, one of our speakers. So that's the thing that I think is really cool about events that you just can't replicate in a podcast or in any other non-live and in-person format, which is the improvisation, if you will, of life that you can have, and all the questions you can answer, and the feedback that can ensue. So yeah, it does have the potential, I think, to be transformational.
Definitely, definitely will. No, I have no doubt, no concern on that. It's going to be definitely in that direction. And the location you are in, it's quite beautiful as well. It's very accessible. The part of Florida, well, we have an hurricane these days, but
Yeah, that's right. I escaped to my just north of Boston where I live, but yeah, I've been watching that on the radar. Wow.
oh yeah, yeah. I used to live in Boston actually before coming to Miami.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, but anyway, so before doing this event, you've been in the wellness industry. You've been in the more like experimental, I would say, a type of event where people were going and they have an experience and they come and they live what they're doing. Are you
Mhm.
transposing this type of concept into the concept of eudaimonia? And would you like to see that in the future, maybe integrating more kind of, let me get that word out, holistic approach
Mhm.
for wellness, outside of the scientific approach that today you have many doctors and scientists, but would you be extending to other type of experience?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's I mean, I'm not sure yet. I would say that, certainly in my past, I mean, I just by way of quick introduction, I was the co-founder of an event series called Wanderlust that I guess
Uh,
could be credited as innovating or creating the idea of a wellness
Oh
festival.
yeah.
And, you know, really in our initial foray, that was sort of a mashup between a, you know, gigantic yoga retreat and a little bit of an ideas, sort of health and wellness ideas thing, and then mixed with a music festival. And so, you know, it was a strange concept when it came out, but I think it really fit a need, which is that, you know, health and wellness is not actually miserable. It's
No.
something people do for fun. You know, it's sort of like you know, I think the older you get and the more you get into it, the more you realize that there is, particularly in community, right? If you have, you know, you're in a beautiful place and there's a great yoga class or there's a great trail run or something of that nature that you can do, if you can then, you know, expand your mind with an interesting talk or something like that, and then there's some arts and entertainment at night. I mean, it's sort of kind of, for me, feels like a perfect day if I had to
Yeah.
imagine it. And so, you know, I think a lot of the ways that was what we were, you know, creating with Wanderlust. And so, you know, to take some of that DNA definitely has made it into Eudaimonia. I would say the differences are easier to describe. There are many similarities. The differences are really just that I think Eudaimonia really has focused more on health in particular and science-based health practices in particular. So there's a little more focus on that, whereas Wanderlust was more in, you know, a lot of personal development and Eastern spirituality, or personal
Hmm, hmm.
spirituality and you know, Eastern influence in that event. So um, you know, those are the differences. But the idea, which was an arc of a day where you start with sort of movement or meditative activities, you move towards more intellectually stimulating activities, talks, lectures, things like that, and then you end with community, whether that's having, you know, a group dinner together or some live music or other sort of form of celebration. That concept we've moved very much to Eudaimonia. So Eudaimonia, I would say, is a conference in name, and we're calling it a summit because I just don't like the word conference very
Oh
much.
yeah. Yeah,
But
yes.
but you know, I'd say from an experiential perspective, is we've worked really hard to, on one level, ensure we're incredibly good at conveying important information that people want to take away, but at the
Hmm.
same time making sure that it's also incredibly fun. There's surprise and delight, and there's art, and there's comedians, and there's,
Beautiful.
you know, beautiful artists and a harpist
Yeah.
you encounter in the corner, and
Wow.
just things that create the unexpected, because I think that's part of what, you know, puts people in a mindset to receive something new, and that's really what we're trying to
Yeah.
accomplish.
Yeah. Yesterday, Dr. David Rabin was telling me, the
Mm.
psychiatrist was telling me that you need to feel safe to accept information, and so that's what you're trying to create with that setup and background. Tell me, are people ready now to get more into uh, this knowledge of health and wellness in deep? Because we have been relying as a society way, well, a lot on the healthcare system. Are we disrupting from the healthcare system because we want knowledge that comes from science more than knowledge that comes from pharma? Or are you in agreement, or are you disagreement with what I'm trying to bring in here?
Um, I would, I mean, you know, there's sort of personal and there's, you know,
Yeah,
the event itself. Like, I mean, I have my personal views, obviously, and I'm
please.
happy to share those because I, you know, I mean, obviously, I think like many people, I'm very critical of the sort of focus of big pharma on maintaining chronic conditions without
Mm,
curing them, right?
yeah.
And I think that that's often observed across, you know, also many doctors. It's not a radical statement. Obviously, drugs that you have to take for your whole life make a lot of money. There's a financial incentive to do that. And then, you know, obviously many of the conditions that they're treating are things that are only really cured by diet, exercise, sleep, and other personal behavioral modifications. And so that's tough. And, you know, for various reasons, whether a lack of education or some of the personal changes that are required, you know, not everyone makes those. So, but you know, I think the system is rigged against telling people also the simple things they need to do to be healthier. And so, you know, I really see eudaimonia as filling a gap more than necessarily being in
Hmm.
opposition to anything. I mean,
Yeah.
said another way, if I have an infection, boy, am I grateful big pharma's around to make some antibiotics. Like,
Correct.
I'm very
Yeah.
grateful. And there are
Yeah.
many conditions that fall in that category. And I don't
Right.
want to be a critic in that sense of big pharma for that. I just think that the system that has built up is obviously completely not focused on the most elemental building blocks of what fosters good health in humans, and is instead focused on pharmaceutical cures and other quick fixes that do not actually solve the underlying problem. So to fill that void, eudaimonia exists because I think, people need that information. And really, the only person who can change your metabolism is you.
You.
It's not anyone else, because it's going to
Yeah.
involve how you move, how you sleep, what you eat, and many other factors. And so, we want to encourage people to feel like they can be agents, or as we say, the architects of their own health and well-being. And, I think this conference is here to hopefully, encourage that and foster that and give people the information and tools they need to achieve
Yeah.
that.
There's a big movement now that is growing and growing. Of course, the biohacking movement behind it has been like kind of underneath the lines, but then you had people like Brian Johnson coming over and saying
Hmm.
like, okay, now biohacking is some sort of everywhere. But believe me, trust me, even if I run the magazine, Biohackers Magazine, for me, biohacking is nothing else than just taking care of your health and starting
Mm.
with natural element. I don't even know why we have put a name on it. What I surely know today is that a lot of people are interested in improving their lives. They know that we haven't done the right thing. We've been poisoning ourselves with a lot of stuff coming from our food and everything. And thanks to people like Andrew Huberman or Mike Hyman or Robert Loftkin as
Mhm.
well, these guys have brought knowledge to the community, and the world is starting to open in that direction.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, I absolutely agree. And I think that, and Brian Johnson's at our conference, which we're grateful that he's coming. I mean, I think we
yeah,
have a lot of people that, Dave Asprey's there. We have a lot of people coming from
nice.
the
Yeah,
the traditional, if it is, biohacking community. But, and that's obviously a community we embrace, because I think it's a community that has been willing to experiment on the frontiers of
hmm,
what is possible. And with that comes knowledge and learning. It's obviously not also something that's for everyone, nor do I think it's sort of the only way you can approach good health. But I think it's an important viewpoint, and also really important for sort of pushing frontiers and determining what works and what doesn't work. Because I mean, the more radical fringe of the biohacking community are people that are essentially self-experimenters, right?
yeah,
And they're scientists on themselves. And I give them a lot of credit, in the same way that,
yeah,
you might think of a an astronaut or an explorer. They're sort of explorers with various compounds and other things they can do to see how that can affect their health and longevity. So, I think it's really interesting to hear that perspective, and I'm interested in it. But I think it's also, there's another side of it too, which is something we want to explore. And, at what point does, the quest for better health or longevity become actually counterproductive, or become
yeah,
a mental, I don't want to call it mental illness, but you know what I mean?
yeah,
Can become something where, like, anything becomes an obsessive behavior that's no longer helpful. And I think that, I mean, certainly in some people's eyes, maybe Brian Johnson's crossed that line. Obviously not for
yeah.
him. He's very
No,
positive about the
see,
experience he's
yeah,
having. And so
yeah,
I
yeah,
think hearing that dialogue is also very interesting. I mean, in the same way
yeah.
that, I look at ultra marathoners or people who do that kind
It's
of stuff, and I'm
same.
like, holy crap,
Yeah,
it's incredible what you do. And I would
yeah.
never want to be you. But, so
Yeah.
anyway.
No, but you got it. You got it so right. I used to have a talk that was called "The Extreme Biohacking and the Counter Effect of It," like
Mm,
because everything you do for your body when you go to the extreme, we are prone to addiction, and you get addicted to those
yeah.
things. So then it's very hard to reduce the inflammation that is created by addiction,
Hmm.
and that's the whole concept of it. I agree. I love the way you take it, and I think that for me when I see what you've done before, and when I see what you're doing today, I'm dreaming about this mix and match of this holistic meditative state of learning that
Hmm.
none have brought today to the society. You're
Hmm.
bringing a different approach with the science, the pure science from coming from doctors and scientists, but you still have that spirit that transpire from you.
Well, yeah. Or, um, excuse me, I had a phone
Yeah.
call come in despite having turned on mute.
That's okay.
What's really interesting about that, honestly, is that so when I started Wanderlust and yoga and meditation, I mean at that point, I mean you go back to 2009. I mean obviously there was yoga had been fairly established, but still was not quite
Mhm.
mainstream, and meditation was still seen as rather fringy or connected to Buddhism or other Eastern spiritual traditions. And since then, I mean, the explosion of scientific research essentially confirming the mental and physical health benefits
Yeah.
of both of those practices. I mean, it's just irrefutable at this
Yeah.
point, and it's
Yeah.
irrefutable that these practices are, absolutely contributing to good health in as much of a way as, going for a jog or doing any other form of,
Yeah.
physical or mental exercise. And so I thought I've always sort of viewed that as like this. It's nothing that I did. It's actually just that there has been a convergence between Western science and some of these ancient Eastern practices that have had incredible value for humans for thousands of years. And lo and behold, well, they have value because they work, right? And so we know that. So I think that what's very interesting is that, underlying all of these things, there is sort of a value system, right? There's a value system
Mhm.
of, quiet, of listening, of contemplation, of in-person community, of trusting and valuing nature. All of these things relate if you think of how that relates to our food or the practices we do. So, I do think that it's sort of impossible when people say science, they often think of, a very hard,
Lab and yeah.
metal,
Right.
Western,
Yeah.
sterilized kind
Yeah.
of thing. And actually, we're biological, non-digital, non-binary creatures, and we live in symbiosis with bacteria and the
Yeah.
earth and so many other things. It's just I don't think we can view health in that very strict sense of that. And I do think that, the interesting thing is that the tools of science though work for finding truth, right? They're truth seeking tools is
Correct.
all they are. It's
Yeah.
not. I mean, even I've had this. Like, I've always thought, oh, science, and you think of like a lab, right? But really, what science is a method to gain and find the truth, and to
Yeah.
constantly question the truth and revise the truth as more information comes out.
Exactly. Because
And
when you have
and
a
and
conclusion, you have to dismount it and try to change it. Yeah. Sorry to.
Exactly. And so in that context, I think it's really interesting, so now we have scientific proof for many of the Eastern spiritual practices that have gone on. That's great. Let's fold them into what we're doing, and let's
Hmm.
let's treat them. And so anyway, I think, Eudaimonia will be a place where you can get plenty of quote unquote hard Western science. You can also meditate and do breath work and do
Nice.
yoga. You can
Yeah.
also, get your ass kicked by Jillian Michaels, so there's a wide
Nice.
range of experiences for everyone.
I'll try all of them.
Yeah.
Uh, are you a believer in living over 100 and something? Like, like today, it's, we're talking longevity at large, and some people say, oh, we're going to live up to 180. Some people say, I won't die. Some others say, like, I'm going to be happy if I live up to 82. What's your
Hmm.
take on that? How do you feel in that?
You know, from a scientific perspective, I don't know at all. I mean, A, I'm not really a scientist, and B, I think the science is very inconclusive. There's obviously,
Mhm.
metformin and a bunch of other things that are
Yeah.
banning, or rapamycin and a bunch of other things that are going around that are, seem to have in mice, effects that may
In
extend
mice.
longevity. And yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And so I think the jury of scientists is out on that one for sure. But I guess more philosophically, I have a strange feeling that, eh, well, I guess I don't believe that we are going to conquer death. I would I don't believe that that's possible. I believe, I mean, certainly not as a creature resembling where we are
Hmm.
now. I mean, some
Right.
cyborg in the future, perhaps, or uploading our brains into an AI someday, maybe. But the humanity that we live in, I mean, so much of what we do and what motivates us and what makes us who we are is the process of aging. I mean, if I even think of myself 20 years ago, I kind of feel like I was a different person, but much of that was just to do with that biologically I was different. My brain was different, my body was different, and a lot of things about me. And so I don't know. I guess just I would be one of the people that actually missed death to the extent that death stopped being a thing. I don't think we'd be better off for it personally.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. You know, it's like having a fulfilled life. That is probably the most important thing. Well, by the way, we are still designed as humans to live up to 125 or 230. That's approximately how our cells are made. But we
Mhm.
don't do it. We don't make it just because of the pollutant and the stress and everything we have around.
Mhm.
So
Because of living.
because of
Said
living.
another way.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
actually I love it because of living with
Yeah.
everything that is
Yeah.
included in that sentence. You're
Mhm.
so right. Thank you so much for this time, Sean. It's a great
Sean, it's been
pleasure. Yeah.
same here. Really a pleasure to speak
Please.
to you as
Yeah.
well.
Let's remind our public when the event is, where it is, and how they can get access to tickets, please.
Sure. So Eudēmonia is in West Palm Beach, in the Hilton West Palm and the adjoining Palm Beach Convention Center. It takes place from November 1 to 3. Tickets you can get at eudēmonia.net, which I picked a name that no one can spell either. It's Eudemonia, Eudēmonia. And we hope to see you there.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. We're going to put all these links anyway in the captions and everything. Thanks for your time. We can't wait to be there. It's going to be huge.
Well,
And
thank you.
thanking from the side of the biohacking community for organizing this type of events as well, because I think it's important to extend this knowledge to everybody, making this world better. That's what you do.
Thank you. Well, that is actually very directly what we're trying to do. So I hope it actually works out that way.
Yeah.
We will see. But I certainly appreciate your support and look forward to seeing you
Okay.
again, I guess,
Yeah.
as we term it
Yeah.
in
Well,
person.
that's it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
All right, Sean. Thank you.
Thanks.